Welcome to the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast. My name is Lauren Wells, here with my co-host Chris Seveny. We're committed to providing you with the knowledge required to build wealth through real estate investing. Tired of consuming content about real estate? Stuck in analysis paralysis? Ready to do your first deal? As a member of our community, you will learn how to go from consuming content to taking that first step into the world of real estate investing. Our show is not about getting rich quick, but about providing you with the knowledge you need to take action. Join us as we speak with experienced investors who share action tips on how to escape the corporate world, start a thriving side hustle in the world of real estate, and go beyond your W-2 or 401k.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast. I am your host, Chris Seveny with 7E Investments. And today I want to talk about the dark side of note investing. What does that mean? Well, first, I want to explain a little bit about what we do. We run a mortgage note fund where we call fix and flip performing and non-performing mortgage loans. And if you have not seen one of our webinars, I highly recommend you go check us out at 7einvestments.com to learn more. Today's environment, we're starting to see a lot more education and training come out on note investing. Why is that the case? A lot of the people who are professional gurus, is what I'll call them, have pretty much milked or worked the well on short-term rentals, the BRRRR strategy in real estate, house hacking, seller financing. So what's the next flavor of the month? And with the New York Fed coming out and talking about the economy worsening, people getting more behind on their bills, it's pretty evident that we are going to start seeing an increase in mortgage note defaults. Now, we're currently at historical lows. So when people start coming out and say it's a reckoning like 2008, that is not going to be the case. Or this is my opinion, that's not going to be the case. But there's still plenty of product out there for individuals, but a lot of times people are only taught the good things that can happen in notes. So I want to share some stories about some of the challenges that you can have with a loan as well, and talk about 3 case studies right now, or very interesting stories that I can share with people. The first is a loan where the borrower was 7 years behind on payments. And when the loan was acquired, the borrower was approximately only 3 to 4 years behind. This was a loan that was held in prior portfolio for about 3 to 4 years. And a lot of times people think, well, why would you hold a loan for that length of time? And during the time, we looked at the property value, which continued to go up, and we tried to work things out with the borrower. Now, in this instance, we started with the legal action with the borrower. And as part of the legal action, we had to go through mediation. Now, this borrower is what I would say is a professional borrower. They know how to game the system. And what are some of the things they do, game the system? One is during mediation, they kept changing their attorney, saying, oh, I have a new attorney, I need to reschedule. I have another attorney, need to reschedule. And the mediator gave them 3 opportunities, but then the 4th finally was, okay, that's enough. But each mediation is roughly a month apart, and it was also during the summer. So the borrower basically bought themselves 6 months just by that mediation component. So we finally get to mediation, and the borrower doesn't have an attorney. And the borrower came out and told the mediator, speaking with the mediator, and a lot of the data that they were providing to the mediator was just not true. And one of the attorneys who was handling the case for us was not on the call, so that was the low-hanging fruit this borrower went after. Fortunately, I have a very good relationship with this attorney and their colleague who was on the call, and we both were texting him and said, hey, we need you on this call. And the attorney got on the call, and they had the borrower restate everything, and not one thing that the borrower had said was true, and my attorney had factual evidence to back up every single component. So right then and there, this was a red flag of, okay, we kind of can tell who we are dealing with. So it came to the conclusion that as part of any mediation, we made an offer to the borrower in regards to what they would need to do to potentially get a loan modification. Now, some of the things that were interesting that came out during the mediation were we knew this borrower was not occupying this property. It was a rental. And we asked, and the mediator asked point blank, are you living in the property? And the borrower said, I do not need to answer that. Then the mediator said, you have a renter in the property, or are you collecting rental from this? And the borrower said, I do not need to answer that. So we knew the borrower because we actually had sent somebody to the property and the borrower was not living there. And they mentioned they are a tenant. So the borrower was collecting rent every month and not paying the mortgage on this property. And the mediator knew it. My attorney knew it. We knew it. So how did we move this forward? Well, we ended up terminating the mediation because we couldn't come to a conclusion and proceeded with the foreclosure. And the borrower then filed bankruptcy. And as part of the bankruptcy, the borrower was not married, but the borrower was trying to claim someone else's income in some aspects, but then in the bankruptcy wanted to take it out. So wanted to say they could afford the property and that they got this money, but then in the bankruptcy, they're using information in one step where it would benefit them, but not want to use it would hurt them. So the borrower filed bankruptcy, and this was the first bankruptcy they filed, and they were not making any payments as part of the bankruptcy. They were trying to get a plan approved where the plan started out with very low payments and then ballooned to significant dollars. We're talking like start out with $200 a month in net for the first 24 months and then go to $3,000 a month. Meanwhile, the borrower had no employment, did not put the rental information or anything on the property within the bankruptcy. It took approximately 5 to 6 months. The bankruptcy got dismissed because the borrower wasn't making payments. And then we file another bank. And then we go to foreclosure, set the sale date. The borrower files bankruptcy again. And we ask the attorney, hey, is there anything we can do? The borrower was not paying. They weren't doing anything. And our attorney says, unfortunately, no. We just have to play it out. But if they file for a third time, that's when we can get a motion to stay because it would be evident at that time. Same course happens. We go through this one took about 8 months of time. So when you look at the timelines of first starting the foreclosure, getting the mediation, that whole process was about 10 months. Then the first is 16. Now we're another. And so we're already at 24 months of this, within this loan, and we're basically not getting anywhere. And within the bankruptcy, there's nothing you just have to sit and wait, unfortunately. Our attorney would mention we could file a motion which would try and get us out of the bankruptcy, but the courts will try and give a borrower the benefit of the doubt pretty much all the time, is what we've seen. So we just sit and wait till it gets dismissed again because the borrower, again, does not make any of the payments through bankruptcy. So it's dismissed, and we go to attorney, okay, let's reset the foreclosure date, and it's 3 months out from the new sale date. What happens the morning of the sale? The borrower files bankruptcy again. And of course, we can't go through with the sale. Fortunately, in this case, we're able to petition the court that the borrower has filed 3 consecutive bankruptcies and we should be relieved from or not put in the bankruptcy court. And the court agreed with us. So the court agreed that this is not part of the bankruptcy. We can continue on with the sale, which again was another 2-month period before this all went through. Now, the interesting thing as part of this entire process was the borrower wasn't living there. It was a rental. And they're just, hey, we're not paying taxes, we're not paying anything. So we're just basically collecting the rent. And let's see how long we can get this thing out. And they're probably collecting $1,200 a month, rough, I'm guessing, on this property. So they're like, hey, I'm making $1,200 a month. Now, the fees and the interest and everything else that's getting added to this is not $1,200. So they're probably thinking, okay, because there was equity in the property. Now, I still think the borrower would have been better off to sell the property versus letting it go to foreclosure and get sold at auction. But That's what ended up happening. And in this case, again, it was over a 3-year process that this all went down. And I say that because we were fortunate enough during this time that property values were rising significantly in this area. But we're in an economy now where you have to be much more careful in regards to property valuations, properties going down, because who knows where things are going to be in 3 years. So this is one of the aspects of note investing where time is so important. So I wanted to share this with people so they had the understanding of, while you as a lender like to think that you're in control, you really are, but you are not. We hope you're enjoying this episode of Creating Wealth Simplified. We wanted to take a moment and tell you more about our passive income fund at 7E, which is open to both accredited and non-accredited investors. Our latest offering targets an 8% annual return distributed monthly with the ability to potentially achieve a greater return through our bonus share program. If you'd like more information, reach out to us at invest@7einvestments.com to learn more. Thank you. So I want to pivot to a similar case study so people think, oh, well, this is just a one-off, Chris, and this never happens. To share another case study we had where this one was, the borrower was, again, 7 or 8 years behind. By the time this came to foreclosure, it was about 12 years behind. And in this instance, similar story, a mother-daughter bought a property, and this one was actually, it was a double wide trailer, which we've been shying away from now for several years, but it was affixed to a foundation, and it was a larger property. I mean, a lot of acreage on this. The mother passed away and the daughter moved out because she let the property get completely ripped up. I mean, holes in the roof. This property, unfortunately, couldn't be seen from the street, and they had gates, so we couldn't get access to the property. But really, the value was always in the land, is what we had anticipated on this asset anyways. And it was one that was thrown in. This was probably back in like 2018, 2019, give you an idea when this loan was bought, in a very early fund. But the borrower filed for foreclosure. Borrower filed a counter lawsuit noting that it was unlawful for us to foreclose, and they tried to get like the FBI involved. And I mean, it was just a crazy lawsuit that they were attempting. But with any lawsuit, you have to defend it. And that took time. This one actually was pretty quickly resolved within several months. We filed a motion to dismiss because there was no actual evidence within the lawsuit, and we won. We tried to mediate with this borrower. We tried to get them on payment plan, which they said they would do, but would never make a payment. So after about 6 months of mediation, we continued with foreclosure. Similar to the last opportunity, borrower filed bankruptcy. And I'll be the first to tell you, I love bankruptcy loans. In most instances, borrowers will get on a restructured plan, they'll start paying, and then they can be extremely valuable to have in your portfolio. There are borrowers who, will do what I'm talking about right now. And in this instance, borrower filed bankruptcy, and they filed it in the northern section of the state, which is where the property was located. And that ended up, after about 10 months, took a lot longer, got dismissed because it took a while to get, actually, let me step back. That was the second bankruptcy. The first one took about 1.5 years. And the reason why is the borrower was trying to say the house was unsecured. And what they're saying is because it's a double wide trailer, which trailers are technically considered like an automobile, that we cannot collect the full loan amount. And we're not due. We're only have to get the property appraised based on the land value, and only that is what would be able to collect. And there's case law out there that, yes, typically if a double wide is not on a foundation, depending how the mortgage is written and how everything was provided, the borrower had a legitimate argument if property wasn't on a foundation, didn't have a basement, and was always written as real property in the mortgage in all the documents versus property that isn't real property, which is real estate essentially. But we had to defend it and go back and forth with the courts, and that took over 1 year. So after winning that, the case got dismissed. And then, of course, the borrower turned around and refiled again. This one was quicker. It was less than a year and got dismissed again. And the borrower didn't have any lawsuit or anything. So we go to proceed with foreclosure. And again, third time's a charm. This time the borrower filed bankruptcy, but they filed it in a different part of the state. Each state has different regions for bankruptcy. So they filed it in a different district, already knowing that the other district had already thrown it out twice because the plan was not what they basically were making and everything. Just the numbers didn't work, and it would have had to have been a Chapter 7. And in Chapter 7, everything gets liquidated and they would have had to sell the property. So the borrower did not agree with that. So they're like, okay, I'll ask, essentially, if I ask daddy 3 times or twice and he says no, let me go ask mommy. And that's what they basically tried to do by going to talk to or file in a different district. We had our attorney immediately file something that says, hey, look, the property and they live in this other district. They're trying to say they have an attorney who's based out of this district, so that's where it should be filed. And the court reviewed it and they ruled in our favor. So they ruled in our favor. And again, third time a charm, they kicked it out of bankruptcy, would not let the borrower file again, and went to go to foreclosure and finally foreclosed on this property. Now, the interesting thing as we wrap up this episode, I'll mention in both these instances, we've given the borrower ample opportunity to either work with us, also offered them what's called cash for keys, meaning, hey, look, we'll give you $5,000 to walk away from this property. The second case study I just talked about, we actually offered them $10,000. We were giving them a check for $10,000 to sign the deed over to us. They didn't, and they end up getting nothing. Same in that first case study. Offered them money. In that instance, they were using it as a rental, so they probably end up making out better in the situation. But either way, we tried to work with the borrowers in those instances. And unfortunately, we could not. So why do I share these stories? Again, I want to go back to talking about time is very important in the note investing space. It's important as part of your due diligence. Understand you might not be able to read every borrower is like this or will stretch things out like this. But if they do, you have to make sure you model things properly to make sure that you can still make money on these assets. Fortunately, in both these cases, we still did very well because we had anticipated that these were going to be a long, drawn-out process. But I know a lot of people will just hear an attorney say, oh, it takes 6 months, and they just base everything off of 6 months, which can be very problematic. So hope you enjoyed this episode of the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast. I wanted to share, again, a great case study in regards to what the good, the bad, the ugly of what can happen in this business. For more information about us, please check us out at 7einvestments.com. Look forward to hearing from you and can't wait to catch you on the next episode. Thanks and have a great day. Thank you for joining Lauren and I on this episode of the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast. Each week, we bring you expert education, experience, and information in a digestible format to help you identify investment opportunities so you can build wealth through real estate and take action toward your financial goals. Enjoy the show, share with a friend, or subscribe to the show and leave us a review.